where we're going to end up. So I'm going to go chase down the flag. If someone wants to hand this off to me, if they see it pop up somewhere, that would be awesome. But probably asking too much. So Adam, we'll just talk until I can find this. What we were talking a little bit about South Carolina, where I was last weekend, which was a lot of fun. You had mentioned you'd been there a little bit, and I was comparing it to Nashville. I will say the streets there are very, very tiny, as are the sidewalks. And the interesting part of all of that is because they were a walled city that was able to hold about 300. It was about 8 blocks long and 3 blocks deep. And they held between 800 and 3,000 people at various points in time. So they did not have the ability to expand roads. And then once they built the city around, expanding through the walls, the streets were the size they were going to remain. Kind of weird.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So that was fun. Let's see here. We've got some viewers, but I can't tell if we're live. So I don't know. Let's just. Oh, we are? You found it?
No, but someone tweeted at me that we are.
Oh, yay. All right. Well, then let's get into it. We are the DFS Strategy Show. This is, of course, your old pal Emac here with one Adam Scherer. And we're going to go through a 9-game slate. This one is unique in that there is a ton of injury news. We've got a bunch of teams on back-to-back. And in addition to that, we had some players go down on Thursday night as well, or at least have some injury concerns. So we are going to have some issues there from the top, Adam, so I can have just a moment to try to get everything set up here on the backside. What did you feel about last night's slate? Did you misinterpret everything? You and I were both incredibly heavy on CJ McCollum. He only played 12 minutes. Ankle injury, I believe, is what knocked him out. I don't think he's going to play today. But setting that aside, did you have any reads you were proud of? Any that did not come to fruition, etc.?
Not really. I mean, McCollum shaped my whole night because I decided to go heavy on him. So on non-late swap sites, I was completely screwed. And then even on DraftKings, it was really tough because I obviously had missed out on a lot of stuff that I would have gotten to from the early games by the time Lillard was ruled in. So that was, obviously the biggest thing that hurt my night. The guy that I would say I got the most incorrect was Dwight Powell, who played reasonable minutes. He just had a terrible game, which hurt. Roster construction wise, I probably should have gone a little bit more balanced and not as much stars and scrubs, but it is what it is, and normally that way works out for me. So probably I thought it was a slate where a lot went, I think, as we expected it to. Personally, for me, it just didn't work out in my lineups because of the decisions I made regarding the Blazers.
All right, I found our little stream here. Yeah, and that was a bit of a mess last night. What got me was not so much DeJounte Murray. I mean, he had the good game, which we talked about. That was being a possibility, and I went away from that just because I knew the way he would get there would have to be incredibly efficient and get 30 minutes. Both of which happened. So he had a nice game, but everybody else kind of died on the vine there from not Delonnie Walker, from Lonnie Walker Jr., or pardon me, Lonnie Walker the fourth, and a few others. That was just one that was going to be a lottery at any point in time. The other one that I was not happy with was Damian Lillard playing. That mucked up a few things for me, and then of course there was the whole kerfluffle as mentioned with the CJ McCollum. So it just was a bit of a disaster all the way around. Lost 2/3 of my buy-ins, or I should say 2/3 of my buy-ins did not return to my pocket last night. So we are onward, we are upward, we are looking at today. There's a little small 2-gamer that is going off at 3:30. There's a few contests out there for that. Nobody outside of, looks like FanDuel is doing all day stuff, and it looks like it's mostly just ticket contests. Yahoo does a little bit, but they're in some smaller contests. Those are fun because you do have Late Swap. They are the presenting sponsor here of the Early Bird podcast. Your decision points in these earlier games are really going to be coming down to, let's see, it looks like Drew Holiday's still going to be out. JJ Redick, questionable with the hamstring. So he's a game time decision. He's missed about a week now. You have Jahlil Okafor, who is not going to play. He has a back injury. You have, who's the other guy? Kenrich Williams, I believe, is still out. He has not played since the 6th. So he's been out 2 weeks. He is dealing with a back issue. So that still gives plenty of usage there for Brandon Ingram. Lonzo Ball's price is ticking up. He is having a nice resurgence, getting back to where he was when he was one of Adam's favorites there with the Lakers. You have Derek Favors. Hey, it must have been revenge because he managed to drop 50 fantasy points coming back off of injury. Or it could have been that he made 10 of 12 shots. He played 36 minutes. That's the highest we have seen in his last 10 games. So he is someone that you can consider in that one. If we look over at the Clippers side, Paul George remains out with his hamstring injury. That, of course, gives the bonus run there to Kawhi Leonard, who has basically been living in the 50 fantasy point area for the last few games. You have Montrezl Harrell, who has been a little disappointing, but a lot of it's been minutes driven. Have you seen anything that you want to take from the Clippers rotation recently that has changed with him, or has that just been game situations?
Yeah, it's been. I mean, they've been in blowout wins, so he's not necessarily getting all of his run. Zubats has also been playing more minutes. Zubats has been in that 22 to 24 minute range, which takes minutes away from Harrell. In part, though, I think that's also been matchup driven from matchups against guys like Vooch, like Tristan Thompson. So probably a bit of just Zubats playing well, and then also the score.
All right, looking at which Michael Green got a price increase. Of course, he's coming off a strong game as well against Orlando. 30 fantasy points in 20 minutes. Racked up a double-double. That was nice to see, but he's not the discount dandy. Kind of looking at the later one there. If you have been trusting in... I don't know that trusting is the right word. If you have been rewarded if you have been playing Giannis Antetokounmpo recently, because he has been either A, getting minutes, like he did in that Boston game where he had 35 minutes, shot 11 of 22 from the field. Somehow he only hit half of his free throw shots, 10 of 20. Not good, but he was 10 of 12.
Somehow. Have you ever seen Giannis shoot a free throw?
He was 10 of 12 the game before. I can't think of what it looks like off the top of my head, but it sounds like he may have gone to the Shaquille O'Neal, Andre Drummond school of free throw shooting.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite that bad, but yeah, it's bad.
All right. So, but it's 17 rebounds in 2 of his last 3 games, 11,000, but they're on the road. We know he needs to get about 30, 32 minutes to negotiate his normal price tag. He has had some amazing games in 25, 27 minutes over the last few. Guess that's what you get when you're an MVP caliber player.
You've 61.5% free throw percentage this year.
Okay, so not a complete disaster, but if you had asked me, Colt, I would have said like 72 or 74.
Well, and to be fair, he was at 72.9 last season.
So that would be like within 72 or 74, right?
Yeah.
Just saying, hey, fell out of a boat and I hit water, so I'm going to call myself a magician there. Just cruising through her. How do you feel about Brook Lopez today? And no, I don't care that he played with Brooklyn, but he is someone that has been up and down. Had a solid game there against Boston. I did not think that was the best matchup for him, but was nailing some threes, got 4 blocks. That's going to be very helpful for his game. How do you feel about him going against Brooklyn? Because he has not played in a game yet against them this year.
I think that it should be good because I like most of the main Milwaukee guys more when they're on the road against competent teams. Brooklyn's a pretty fast team. They're a good enough team, and they're at home. So there's a decent chance this game stays competitive, and you get like 28 to 30 minutes from Lopez.
All right. And then on the Brooklyn side, how are you feeling about Kyrie back? Is that good, bad? Is it continuing? Who's it impacting with Dinwiddie, with Karis LeVert, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously takes usage away from Dinwiddie. It takes some usage away from LeVert. You're seeing minutes staggered, so normally there's 2 of them on the floor between that trio. Irving is obviously the priority, and then Karis LeVert, someone that I've been looking at just because his minutes have still been down, but his price tag's really cheap. He's a really he's a good player. And so I think sooner than later, you're going to get one of those games where either he gets a couple more minutes than we're expecting, or he has an efficient game, and you just get a really low owned big game from LeVert.
All right, and then rounding this out, and I'm hitting our tweets out, and I'm getting us back on track here. How are you feeling about the front court there? We've seen some inconsistency with the roles for Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan recently.
DeAndre Jordan, I think, is out.
Oh well, that would simplify things quite a bit there.
Temple's out. Harris is out. Jordan is out. Yeah.
All right.
So more minutes for Allen.
Okay.
Path to more minutes for LeVert.
That's gonna be yeah. Well, if you're playing the early one, you've got your marching orders there. All right, now on to our 9-game main slate here. Let me get rid of that tweet, and let's call up my additional stuff here. So on our 9-gamer, we're going to go. There are so many injuries. We're just going to address them as we get in here game by game. Of course, this will be, let me see, I'll mark it 11 minutes in. So when we turn this into a podcast, I will know where to direct everyone. With as many games as we have tonight, there will be a ton of value that we're already aware of now, and I suspect there will be more heading into this. We'll talk about which teams are on a back-to-back as we go through them, and then which teams are playing again tomorrow. I don't know if anybody is. There's only 2 games tomorrow. So you have a 3 o'clock game and an 8 o'clock game. These are going, it's the NBA Conference Championship weekend. So we will have it's the NFL Conference Championship weekend. We will have the NFL live before lock tomorrow, about an hour before kickoff. And then tonight you will get Fast Eddie Fear leading live before lock about an hour before tip-off. So you've got several shows coming up. In the can already, we do have On the Contrary. That was with Pete Overzet, and as a guest, again, reprising his role of filling out the third chair there with Alex, Osimo Baker, and Chris Baggs. I've listened to a fair amount of that show. That one's kind of interesting. They, of course, go well into game theory. Since there is just a 2-game slate there for the NFL, you're going to want to understand how that all works out. So now we're caught up. We're on Saturday evening slate. There is one 7 o'clock game, Adam. It is Phoenix at Boston. We have Jaylen Brown, questionable, dealing with the sore thumb. He's got the Fonzie injury. Cam Johnson, questionable, sore quad. If he's out, we have a host of minutes available because we already know that Kelly Oubre is out. He is still dealing with a concussion. And then you have Daniel Tice is dealing with a bulky knee. He is probable. And Marcus Smart tweaked his ankle. He is probable as well. I expect those guys to play. Do you have, starting off on the Boston side, do you have any additional information on Jaylen Brown? And take us through the front court there for Boston.
Yeah, I mean, just the Brown is listed as questionable. If he's out, you can look back to that Milwaukee game where we saw 40 minutes for Jason Tatum. He wasn't productive, but it does stand out that his minutes were staggered with Kemba Walker, which is a benefit to both Kemba and Tatum. You got 38 minutes from Kemba, which is obviously a lot more minutes than we're used to getting there. Hayward played 32. You had the way they ran the rotation was that Hayward and Tatum were playing with the second unit. Kemba and Smart were playing the full run with the first unit. So if you're trying to figure out rates and stuff like that, you would want to just make sure that you have Tatum and Hayward together with Brown off. You have Kemba with Brown off. So it's a bump for all of those guys, but especially Tatum and Kemba if Brown sits. If Brown's in, then obviously the minutes tick down a little bit, and you don't get quite as much usage for guys like Kemba or for Tatum. So really, really big news there, obviously, because they're in a good matchup against Phoenix too. So I'll like whatever I can get to from Boston if Jaylen's out.
All right. And then with regards to their backcourt, great game there from Kemba. Can we trust him? I don't know. But the price is very intriguing, and as is his recent box score there. So that's a helpful one going against the Phoenix side here. Who would your ranking them with the news we have now? Who's your top 3 from the Boston side of things?
If Jaylen sits, then I would say Kemba, Tatum, and then actually Daniel Tice has been playing big minutes, and he's probable too.
Now let's go back here and look at the Phoenix side. Let's get over to my other window here. So Phoenix, as we mentioned, Cam Johnson. We'll have to see for additional news here. Did anything in their last game surprise you with how they were approaching spreading out 36 or so minutes there from Kelly Oubre? Johnson did get 24 in that one, so that was kind of about double what he normally does in this one. What do you suspect we'll see from Baines, Ayton, etc.? First, with let's assume Johnson's in just quickly for that, and then I think he may miss this game. We'll approach it from that angle as well.
Yeah, so I mean, assuming Johnson's in, I think you probably get a similar rotation to what you got against the Knicks. It is worth mentioning that Boston's not as big, so you didn't get a ton of overlap from the bigs, but you did get some between Baines and Ayton, and then also between Baines and Check Diallo. I would think that maybe they give more minutes to like Tyler Johnson didn't play at all. Javon Carter only played like 5 minutes outside of garbage time. It's possible here that they have Bridges play the 4 and then they run an extra guard out there as opposed to running like the Diallo plus Baines lineups. That doesn't really have a big impact on DFS though. I think the main beneficiaries are obviously still going to be if he plays Cameron Johnson playing in the mid-20s and then Bridges playing huge minutes.
All right.
Also, Dario Saric played 28 minutes. That's a big beneficiary as well.
So, what has kind of the story been with him? We saw him. He started going off of the analysis I did prior to last game. He started like 12 of 14 or 8 of 9, whatever it was. It was a lot, but he had half those games essentially were single-digit fantasy point performances. They weren't really seemingly letting him get out of the teens for minutes. Has that changed a little bit? Is this a desperation play by them, just that the cupboard is so bare, or is he coming out of that injury shadow that has been following him for the last month and a half?
I'm assuming it's just Oubre.
Okay.
You had seen when Oubre was in, you're basically getting 48 minutes from Dario Saric and Mikal Bridges. But now that Oubre's out, Bridges is taking a lot of those Oubre minutes and playing the 3, and so that opens up more minutes. For you basically have to give more minutes to Saric, or you have to give a lot more minutes to Cameron Johnson, or you have to go smaller and play a lot more of Javon Carter or Tyler Johnson. None of those really sound like appealing options. So the big takeaway for me from the Knicks was that at least they let Saric play 28 minutes. That was my only concern in trying to project that game, was that since his injury, they really just had not been giving him much run at all. And I didn't know if they were kind of do anything but play Saric more than 24 minutes, or if they were going to let him get more. And the fact that he played 28 minutes and he also missed the last 2 minutes of the game because it was not a competitive game at that point makes me think that he doesn't have an actual minutes cap. It was more of when Oubre's in, they can just give more minutes to Bridges. But now that Oubre's out, Saric is someone that benefits.
Okay. I'd like to hear that. Let's go to our next game here. Let's go with Philadelphia at New York. This one is, we've got all of our over-unders. Let's see, Boston favored at home by 7 in the last one, 225 over-under. This one, we've got New York 4-point home dogs. They are going against Philly, who will be again without Joel Embiid. Just recovering from surgery on his hand, part of that dislocated finger issue that he had. I guess it's been almost a week now. He should be out for maybe another week and then available, or we'll see how the rehab goes, but this was not going to be a long-term injury for him. But he is out tonight. You have Dennis Smith Jr., who is ruled out. He is dealing with the strained, I can't remember if it's a groin or oblique. You've got RJ Barrett. That is relatively new news, meaning he played the last game for New York, went 14 minutes before spraining his ankle. He's going to be out for at least a week with that one before they're going to look at it again. So that opens up some, well, let's just say Elfrid Payton may not be looking over his shoulder as much as long as this game is relatively close. Let's start off here with the New York side. Adam, with Barrett out, with Dennis Smith Jr. out, who do you think is going to slide into the starting lineup there alongside Elfrid Payton?
I would expect it to be Dotson. He had been the direct replacement for Barrett. They obviously have other pieces they could go to. I mean, you could see Trier, you could see other weird things. It's the Knicks, but based on the rotation that they've used, I would expect it to be Dotson.
All right. And do you have any interest in him going into the starting lineup at all? I'm guessing you're going to have him, around 23 to 25 minutes?
Yeah, I'll probably have like 20, yeah, in that range. Not really interested there. I mean, he's 3K minimum, which is obviously fine, and then you can get the sum. But the Knicks just have so many guys that they can rotate through there. Where I don't think they have to give Dotson a ton of minutes, and it's not like he's a super productive player. So, not someone that I'm really prioritizing.
All right.
You also could potentially get Bullock there.
Was he
He was out last.
Yeah, I
but
was going to say I thought he was the late one of the, or well, not late scratch, but for
yeah, that's actually I kind of forgotten about him because I was looking at the rotation from last game. I think Bullock probably starts.
Okay, he's dealing with the sore neck, but listed as probable. Just see recent minutes for him. Oh yeah, okay. So he started 5 games coming into that before the neck injury. He was playing 23 to 25. Still seems like reasonable minutes guess there for. Oh, why am I blanking on his name? We just talked about him. Who's the New York guard we were talking about? My apologies. Dotson. Still probably similar minutes for Dotson, just where he gets inserted into the rotation. Be a little bit of a question mark. How are you feeling about Julius Randle going against the Embiidless front court here of the Philadelphia 76ers?
I always like Randall. The front or the matchup against the Sixers isn't the best, but you're getting 34 plus minutes in competitive games from him. He's averaging about 1.25 DraftKings points per minute since the coaching change. He leads the team in usage. They are now without their third highest usage guy in RJ Barrett, so maybe a little bit more for him as well. I think that again it's a tough matchup, but I think that at 7,700 that's a pretty appealing price tag.
All right, and then the rest of the front court, Marcus Morris Sr., Robinson, etc. Any vague interest in these guys with so many teams in action?
Morris's price tag came down, which I think is pretty appealing. He's second on the team in usage behind Randall, and then now you have Barrett out, so maybe a little bit more going to him. He played 33 minutes in his first game back against Phoenix, and now you have him at 5,600 on DraftKings. I think he looks like a pretty good option too.
All right, let's talk about the Philadelphia.
And, don't sleep on Mitchell Robinson. Same thing we talked about before. His minutes are all over the place, but he's really cheap. He picked up 30 minutes against the Suns. You had seen his playing time down in the low 20s prior to that, but in games where he's not in foul trouble and playing well, he can get up to 30 minutes. And at 4,700, that's a cheap price tag to take that you can take a chance on.
Yeah, his recent games, let's see, his last 6, though he's averaging just under 1 block, he does have 1.5 steals. So that's kind of inverted from his regular season baseline there. He's someone that can be a difference maker, especially on FanDuel and presenting sponsor Yahoo, where you get 3 points for blocks and steals. Looking to the Philadelphia side, we'll start off with the front court here. I kind of like Al Horford. We've mentioned on the ill-fated Early Bird podcast. Now we know why the sound wasn't working on it, since I fixed that. But we mentioned the rates change, that he's able to spread his wings and fly, Adam, when there is no Joel Embiid. How do you feel if you're comparing Horford and Harris directly against each other? Do you have a preference there in this matchup?
Yeah, I prefer Harris by a little bit, as long as the salaries are similar, because Harris tends to play a couple more minutes than Horford, and without Embiid on the floor, his per minute production is slightly higher. It's like 1.16 points per minute to 1.12. So it's not like it's a lot, but when you factor that in with a couple more minutes, higher usage rate, I do give the edge to Harris as long as they're similarly priced. But I think that both of them are still appealing options, especially on sites where they're lower priced than they are on DraftKings.
All right, and then as we transition through the wings, how you feeling about Richardson? Minutes going up, but hey, so are his prices. Pretty much everywhere. Not quite the steal he was when he was in that 49 to 5,300 range. If memory serves, he's closing in on 6 on FanDuel, and then he's above 6 on DK. How do you feel about Richardson?
He's probably the least appealing starter to me because he doesn't get he gets a usage bump without Embiid, but it's not as high as Harris's is. Horford gets the rebounding bump, and then the minutes aren't quite as secure for Richardson either. Only played 27 minutes last night, whereas like for someone like Simmons, you're pretty much always getting 36 or 37 at least, and some games he's going to push 40. So I think that I would say Richardson's fifth out of the five Philly starters for me.
Yeah, and that makes
Or
sense.
sorry, fourth out of the four.
Okay,
Not
so he's 63 on DK, 59 on FanDuel, 22 on Yahoo. That's having him under the breakpoint of not being in my player pool just because of the size of the slate. And that means, so when I say that, his points per thousand are below kind of the baseline that you're going to look at there on an 11 game slate, which is for DK. It's generally, you need to be in that 5.2 per 1,000. 5.2 points per $1,000 of salary before you're going to start to get into lineups if you're building a lot of them without helping hand or other sorts of intervention there. Matisse Thybulle here is sort of intriguing to me, Adam. I like the minutes availability for him with the injuries. I like the price, in particular on Yahoo, where he is 10. He has been getting, let's see, his last few games, or his last two games, both starts, 25 minutes, 23 minutes. You're not looking to him for scoring, but he did get points-wise, but he did get 5 steals and blocks and 6 steals and blocks in those two starts. He has taken a grand total of 11 shots in those. His usage is damn near non-existent at 11% and 6.5% in those two games. I think he's for sure in play on Yahoo at 10. Would you branch out with him on any of the other sites there?
With him, you're really just looking for any site where you get bonus points for blocks and steals and a cheap price tag. The minutes are there; he's not involved in the offense, so you're depending on defensive stats, which he does get a lot of. But obviously, it's harder to pay for that on DraftKings, where they're only worth 2, and where his price tag has started to come up.
All right, so but dare to dream and just remember we're in that concrete jungle where dreams are made of tonight. No Alicia Keys reference there for you.
I got it.
Okay, good. Good. You're just ignoring it. Good choice as well. Good choice as well. Wrapping up here, we've got one Ben Simmons. Mitchell Robinson will be awaiting him at the rim. Does that dissuade you at all, or is it more the increased price tag that dissuades you from Ben Simmons?
It's more the increased price tag because like he has a high floor. He plays big minutes. He averages over a fantasy point per minute. But my issue with Simmons is that for one, he normally has ownership, and two, he doesn't really get a bump in production without Embiid. So it's kind of the same thing it always is. Some games Simmons is going to have a monster game because he gets more peripherals than normal, or he, happens to make a couple of shots that he normally doesn't make. But normally you're talking about a player with around a 19 to 20% usage rate without Embiid on the floor. He's averaged 1.09 DraftKings points per minute without Embiid on the floor. He is incapable of scoring outside of getting to the rim. So he's just someone that I think like the minutes are really, really nice. It's just that you can get a lot more per minute production from guards for a lot less money.
All right, wrung the value out of that discussion. Let's continue along here. Let's go to Detroit at Atlanta. Atlanta on the back-to-back after having played last night. We had a nice game there once again from Trae Young, if I remember correctly. Yes, 56 fantasy points, played 35 minutes, 31 points, garnered mostly from his half dozen 3-pointers. He did get 9 assists. I believe he's still second in the league in assists to LeBron. He might have slipped to third, but he is someone that's been putting up some monster numbers recently. DK scoring 56, 63, 35 against the Wizards because, of course, in a game which somehow the Wizards won. Then 80 against Houston, 52 against Denver, 62 against Indy, and 50 against Boston. He is regularly making forays into the 60 fantasy point plateau. Is he going to be in your plans tonight, especially going against a Detroit team that has been bottom 5 for the majority of the season in scoring defense? I can't even say it right because I got to go get the door because my dog's going nuts. Talk to us about Trae Young.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that obviously Young is a good option. The salary is still affordable. Played 35 minutes last night against the Spurs. Normally you're seeing 36, 37 minutes from him. He's around a 1.4 DraftKings point per minute player. Detroit has been really bad defensively in terms of efficiency over the last month. They've been one of the worst teams in the league. So all that looks really, really good for Trey. The only negatives I would point to, and they're not like deal breakers. They're just things that you should at least be aware of if you're making, like one lineup or three lineups and have to make a tough decision on Young, is that while Detroit hasn't been good defensively, they actually have been one of the most efficient pick and roll defenses this year. Trey Young is one of the league leaders in pick and roll possessions. That's again not it's not a like primary driver for me. It's just something that it's nice to know. And then also you do have Jeff Teague expected to make his first appearance with the Hawks. I don't anticipate that means Trey Young loses minutes, but it could. It would be weird. But I mean, even if you're talking about like Trey Young's average minutes going from 35, 36 to 32 or 33, that would be a really big deal at this price tag. So again, I think the most likely plan is that Teague is just the backup point guard and then plays like closing minutes maybe alongside Young or something like that. But there's at least a non-zero chance that it shaves a couple minutes off of Young, which would suck. So overall, I think he's a good play, but there are at least a couple of negatives you can point to.
All right, I couldn't figure out why the dog was going nuts because my wife's here. Guess what? My wife was out on the front porch and the dog was egging her on. She's cleaning up Christmas decorations. Somehow the dog thought that barking a lot would help. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. In any event, to answer the question of why was she not making the dog be quiet. Yeah, I agree with you on Teague there. This is not really a place we're going to jump in to go for him. Let's switch it over here to the other side. We've seen Derrick Rose playing more, starting now. We know his minutes are going to be around 30 as more projectable. He did start the last game. That was the second time he started this season. We have seen him, I think it was, now like 4 of the last 6 he was starting in the second half there. So does starting impact him enough negatively or positively to change anything that you're doing? We still know the minutes are going to run to like 29 to 31 is more realistic. I think 30 is a good guess. I would be shocked if we ever see him go over 33 unless it's a really competitive game and Detroit feels like winning, particularly at home or something like that. But how do you feel about the change in where he's going to get his minutes?
It's pretty much like net neutral for me because he's not as productive with Drummond on the floor. If you look at his numbers without Blake and alongside Drummond this year, he's played 399 minutes. He's only averaged 1.08 DraftKings points per minute, which is fine, but it's not as high as when Drummond's not on the floor. But the thing that makes me still feel okay about it is that he has a 32% usage rate and the 32% assist percentage. So the rates are still really good. You could very easily see that per minute production come up over a larger sample, and him starting does at least help to solidify those minutes. So it more or less doesn't make much of a difference for me. And then Drummond takes a little bit of a hit as well. Alongside Rose without Griffin, Drummond's usage percentage drops to 23.2%, but he still has a 26.5% rebounding percentage. He still averaged 1.33 DraftKings points per minute. So overall, it doesn't really change much as far as my interest level in these guys.
All right. Bruce Brown still in the starting lineup. His minutes have fallen off a shelf the last 2 games. So your mileage may vary on that one. This is a good matchup for him. The real question I have is going to be Svi Mikhailiuk. I think he's ticked up in his price enough that, I mentioned that when the music stops, he's going to be the one guy without a chair. His price is up enough that the profit yield on it is going to be a little tough, but he has hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 12 of his last 14 games, he's gotten at least 20 fantasy points. He has topped 25 3 times in that stretch. So he's kind of in a range right now, but his price is adjusted to that range. There is no margin for error, and he has actually been getting more steals than I had expected and been shooting relatively well. If either of these things do not occur, Adam, we're going to get a dud 12 performance if not single-digit performance. Would you risk Svi at all in a juicy matchup, but on a slate where we have a dozen or 20 teams in action?
18, but
18, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not getting there. I mean, it's a good matchup. The price tag, it's really what you said though. Like the profit margin just really isn't there when you're talking about he's 4,400 on DraftKings. For me in tournaments, I'm looking for someone at that price tag to score at least like 32 points. It's one of those spots where I think sometimes maybe people fall into the trap where they're just like, oh, 4,400, he scored 25 points. That's like right around 6x. That's great. It's really not what you're looking for when you're trying to win a tournament. So he just doesn't have that volatility. He's not a high usage guy. He doesn't do a whole lot in the way of peripherals. Maybe he gets up some more shots now that with the second unit now that Rose isn't out there, but he's still not creating for himself. He's still not gonna like take over this offense. So I'm not really interested.
All right. Is he a rich man's Kyle Singler? Since apparently we're talking about Kyle Singler on the DFS Strategy Show regularly now. That's a benchmark.
I'd forgotten about Singler.
On to our next game here, Cleveland at Chicago. This game is second lowest projected point total. It's a 214.5. That has been slowly ticking down. It opened at 215.5. You've got, let's see, what injuries are we looking at? Kevin Love is on a back-to-back. He has not played in the last 3 back-to-backs. I would suspect he does not play in this one. No knowledge, no announcement yet has been made, but that just seems to be the way it's going. He did play 34 minutes last night against Memphis. So are you just maneuvering let's put it this way, if he's in, I don't really have much interest in him or really anybody else on the Cleveland team right now because we have so many other games in the player pool. If he's out, does that open anything for you, and do you like anything on Cleveland either way?
Yeah, I'm assuming Love sits just because kind of why wouldn't he? But if he's out, it gives you Larry Nance as one of the top values. He's still only 3,600. He played like 19 minutes in 3 quarters when Love was out against the Clippers. Played 24 minutes last night. He benefited from Tristan Thompson being ejected in the third quarter. But the fact that he got to 24 minutes, obviously he can get to 24 minutes again. He's not as productive when he starts alongside Tristan Thompson. And when you really want Nance is when he's playing center, which wouldn't be the case if Love is out. But at 3,600, he's still a really good value here if you're going to get 24 to 26 minutes from him at least. So he would look like a great value. If Love's in, I think Love is fine. He wouldn't be a priority, but I wouldn't say he's overpriced either. Where I do think it's interesting too, though, is the backcourt for Cleveland. You've just been getting more minutes from these guys. Colin Sexton played 37 minutes last night. You've been getting, at least 33, 34 minutes in most competitive games from him. You got 31 minutes from Garland, who's been playing 30 plus as well. The prices have started to come up. So again, not priorities for me, but they do have some appeal, especially Sexton.
All right. Friend of the program, Curtis, also known as Go Blue, has a question here. Do we think Tristan sits in this one? I just went back and looked. He has only missed 2 games this year. One was the back-to-back where I think he might have ended up being sick or something, where he did not play on January 5th. That was the second game. That was against Minnesota. But he came back the next game and has played since. I don't think he's going to be out tonight, but I'm not excited about him here.
I assume he plays. He also only played 25 minutes last night because of the ejection. I am higher on him than you, I think, though, because this is a Chicago front court where he should be able to get a lot of rebounds. A good offensive rebounder going up against Luke Cornett and Lauri Markkanen, I think is pretty appealing. He's only 6,600. He's another guy that the minutes have been there for him in competitive games. So I do think he actually looks like a pretty good option.
All right.
And he also would get a bump if Love is out.
Okay. Going to the Chicago side here, of course, we're still without Wendell Carter Jr. Lauri Markkanen continues to be kind of a non-entity, which is a surprise considering how just amazing he was last year. Adam, he has not topped 30 fantasy points in any of his last 3 games. Hell, he has not topped 27 in any of those. I just don't see any upside. I sort of lost all interest in him when he did not reach 40 fantasy points against the Wizards. 2 starts ago, I figured if there, or 2 games ago, also 2 starts ago, I figured if there was a time for him to just really shine, it would be in that matchup. He played 32, or just shy of 32 minutes, but he only had 13 points, 8 rebounds. I think I'm kind of done with him at the moment, unless we get down to a 5 or a 6 game slate. How are you feeling about Markkanen as we transition to the Bulls here?
It's just really disappointing the way that they're using him. He's still not getting minutes at center, which is where it's most productive for him. It also, the fact that he's not getting minutes there makes it really hard for him to top 30 minutes on a regular basis because Thaddeus Young is going to get his minutes. So it's about as unappealing as Markkanen can possibly be, the way that Chicago is using him right now. You look at the rotation yesterday, you got 28 minutes from Luke Cornett. You got Felicio playing 14 minutes behind him. So that's leaving like 6 minutes at center. I'm not sure if Markkanen picked up any of that. But either way, like if you're only talking about, you're only talking about 6 minutes there to go around. It's really tough to like him.
All right, and then finishing up here, everybody's just a big question mark. Luke Cornett, up to, what is he, 5,500 on DK. That doesn't feel good. 42 on FanDuel, and he is power forward. Okay, you could talk me into that. 10, but we're giving up our center spot there on Yahoo. I'd be okay with that if he remains in the starting lineup. Any thought about him? Anybody in the backcourt? There just seems to be a lot of redundancy outside of Zach Attack there.
Yeah, I mean, the Chicago rotation right now is just really tough for me to get to because we've seen Boylan going back and forth this year between playing like one extra guy or not. And right now, Ryan Arcidiacono seems to firmly be in the rotation. He's playing 14 to 16 minutes, and Boylan's been complimenting him. So with him in, it takes minutes away from that whole group of Satoransky, Kobe White, Chris Dunn. So it's really tough to trust any of them. You had Chandler Hutchison pick up 20 minutes last night as well. So I think that, outside of Levine, there's not much I can trust here. I do think that if you're going to play Cornett, it should be FanDuel, where he's a power forward and he's inexpensive. But you're talking still about 28 to 30 minutes of around a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy.
All right, let's continue along here to our next game. Did we catch all of those? Yes, we did. Toronto at Minnesota. Both teams on a back-to-back. We have this really tall guy rejoined the Timberwolves rotation. He's taking the second most three-point shots in the league right now, playing 28 minutes. That would be one. Karl Anthony Towns, do you think he plays on the back-to-back? I would suspect I would not. If he does play, we can't really project him, in my opinion, for more than 30 minutes at this point until we see it.
Yeah, I mean, until we hear anything, I'm assuming he plays, because I think that for the last couple of days, it had been more illness than injury for him. So I would guess he goes. He only played 28 minutes last night. I do agree with you that if he does play, it's still probably 28 to 30 minutes. So not someone that you would be rostering.
All right. I don't mind that he plays. I think it helps the team get better. It's another the top 10 player coming in, so it helps the offensive flow. It changes things, and especially without Teague there, they need actual guys who could put the biscuit in the basket, and he is one of them. So I do think he helps Napier at least maintain. I think that we should see a little more uptick from Wiggins, etc. What do you like from the remainder of this Timberwolves roster?
Not a whole lot. Wiggins has been more productive with Towns on the floor, which is interesting. And it goes back to what you said about the offense just being more efficient. So it's not like it's a downgrade for him, but still not a very appealing matchup. Still not a great price point. Jarrett Culver, everyone else should lose some usage. Napier was really popular last night. He's cheap again today. I was really, really under the field on him last night. I'll probably do the same thing today because he still only played 30 minutes. You're going to have Allen Crabbe there or you should have Allen Crabbe in the rotation. But one thing that we've seen from Minnesota all year long is that they aren't really running huge minutes for most guys. You still only got 30 minutes from Napier. With Towns on the floor, Napier is like a 16.5% usage rate guy. So he's just not someone that I really want to be rostering in a tough matchup, assuming he's getting a lot of ownership.
All right, want to remind everybody here, presenting sponsor Yahoo. That's Yahoo Daily Fantasy. Does have a deposit bonus offer for you. I'm going to drop the link into chat for their NFL Baller final one of the season that is going off tomorrow, Sunday. Sunday fun day, if you will. If you scroll down to the bottom of that, you can find the information, the promo code, and instructions, along with the link on how you can, one, become a baller, and two, also get a deposit bonus up to $30 with your initial DFS deposit. That comes in the form of YSRPs, or Yahoo Sports Rewards points, which are available for immediate use into any contest. We, of course, also have the Cash Building Blocks article daily series. That one will be out a little later this afternoon from yours truly. And that also at the bottom of it talks about Yahoo. And then I also have added a section where I talk about the Yahoo discount dandies. Not all $10 or $10 players are created equal over there on Yahoo. So I call out a couple guys in that $10 to $12 range that stand out over everybody else. Those would be the ones that you would want to look to rather than risk some of the many guys that are there at minimum price. But Yahoo, it is the only place where you can become a baller. I have not become a baller yet this season, Adam. Actually, I think it's been a calendar year since I took down one of the tournaments.
I got second in the NBA one last week, but I've very quickly given most of it back.
Well, see, that's because you believe in charity.
I'm just a nice guy. See my NBA results this year.
Ah, absolutely. You're helping those that are less fortunate. That's what giving back to the community. There are a variety of ways we can say that. I've seen some people in chat being a little frustrated with results and how things happen. I just want to remind everybody, there aren't fish anymore. Pardon? Oh, yes, there are. Let me rephrase that. If you can find them, hang on for dear life, because they're harder to find. Is that a fairer statement? But I think we want to recalibrate how we do things. I think going and playing at Yahoo is one of the better ways of doing that. They have a unique pricing structure that is not replicated anywhere else, which means you really can't lift and shift your player pools from DraftKings and or FanDuel. Now, we've seen DraftKings and FanDuel's prices kind of diverge somewhat this year. So there's a little bit of an edge in there. It is the third site. So even though they do have mass multi-entry and CSV editable files, you still have to do the CSV edits more or less manually. I don't believe Fantasy Cruncher supports that yet for a swaptimizing product, Adam. Is that true?
That is true.
What happened last night when you were trying to fix things?
I lost a bunch of money.
Yes, because he didn't get to Yahoo. So just saying, as people are looking at the different sites there, it falls down the pecking order for them. And then thirdly, their management fees generally run in the 10 to 12% range, which is about 25% less than the other site. Those little margins are what we're playing for at this point. I think any day where you don't lose more than 25 or 30% of your buy-ins is a good day. I think you celebrate anytime you double up, and if you get in the positive 10 to 25%, that's a nice day, and you should feel good about it. Things are a lot more tricky. So last night I lost 2/3 of my buy-ins just for a variety of issues, but most of it was I had 60% of CJ McCollum. So I'm not going to beat myself up and get mad because he only played 12 minutes. I'm mad about what I did for some of my stuff, including not getting my file uploaded in time. But live and learn. We're on to another day, and I'm not going to get overly angry because I'm playing a reasonable amount of money, and if I lose it, so be it. I lose it. What we see a lot of times is people in Slack going ape shit, and I will say that, or on Twitter when they screw up because they're playing too much. If you're playing something enough money that you go into a complete tirade shortly after lock because things aren't going your way, you need to recalibrate what you're doing. This should be entertainment. This should be fun. It should be a puzzle that you're solving each day. That's what we're looking for. Yes, there is a nice ability to gain some money, but if you're, the last time I checked, my ROI at going fishing or going to the movies or playing or bowling, 0, Adam. Funny how that works.
It's actually negative, but
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but yeah, and one thing just to add on to what you said about on average losing or it being a good day if you lose less than like 25%. That's true, assuming you're playing like a tournament heavy.
Yes.
schedule,
Yes.
which I do, and I think is probably the best approach right now. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're playing if you're playing cash games and you're losing 30% every day, you probably should switch up your games. But yeah, assuming we're talking about the way I play, the way you play, playing large field tournaments, the whole idea is that you're just looking to take down this tournament once a season or twice a season, and you make a lot of money when that happens and you come out ahead. But it does lead to a lot of losing days,
Yeah.
and that's just something you have to keep in mind. You don't want to just be going crazy and changing things up because you lost 3 days in a row or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just we'll quickly hit on where can you find little nibbles here and there that can help you out. Fantasy draft, rake free. Okay, that's helpful. If you look at DraftKings, you still get the late swap, and they have, I think, the better player. It's not great, but they have better player rewards than some of the sites. FanDuel, for whatever reason, please don't change FanDuel. They like to, whatever their next big main slate is, that's what they like to default their lobby to. So if it's tonight, if their next main slate is going to be on Sunday, they're going to have the default to that. They're not going to have their default set to the evening games. So a lot of times you can find some overlay in those contests, especially the smaller field ones. That's where you can get it there. Yahoo, very similar. Yahoo goes off with basically every tip off. Yes, these are smaller contests, but generally it's between 1 and 7 entries per contest. But within that, they play through the rest of the night. So it's kind of fun because instead of just being hemmed in with a 2-game slate, if there's still 5 games on the slate, you get a 5-gamer. And then if the next lock time is three games, you get 3 instead of DK or FanDuel that may do 2, and then they may do a one game showdown slate for that final one. So there are a variety of ways that you can find little edges and little nibbles here and there that are going to help you out. So just want to put that out there. All right, back to enough strategy. Back to Minnesota. Anything else you want to wrap up for Minnesota before talking about Toronto, which basically cakewalked through the Wizards last night?
No, I think that's it for Minnesota for me.
All right, so Toronto. Last night was the first of a 4 and 6. Half the games are on the road, half the games there are at home. We saw Marc Gasol play. Where did he end up, Adam? He played the most of the starters. I think he just crested into 30 minutes.
28.8 minutes.
28.8. Okay. So we had talked about on the ill-fated Early Bird podcast that lost to the archives at this point. But do you think he plays today or could be getting a night off there, a little veteran rest day?
I mean, definitely something you want to keep an eye on. I don't really have a good feel one way or the other, but it certainly wouldn't be surprising if he sat.
Yeah. So that let's just say he sits. Well, we should know because let me see that game. Oh, we may not know by lock. So let's say he sits. Who does that help the most? Would it be Ibaka? Would it be Boucher? Would those be guys you're interested in?
Yeah, Ibaka would get the start at the 5. It would basically just be what we've seen for the last close to a month. He starts at the 5. Boucher would be his backup. It wouldn't really. I don't think it would have a huge impact because Ibaka's salary is still high as a result of Gasol being out for so long. But it would be a bump for Ibaka.
All right. How do you feel about Kyle Lowry with everybody coming back? Do you think Pascal Siakam's going to see? It's tough to tell how many minutes are going to be under his belt after last night, but at least most of the rest of those guys kind of got to take it easy. So I don't think this being a back-to-back is really going to curtail them. What do you think about the rest of the Toronto Raptors?
It's not the most appealing situation because you should have Van Vliet back today as well. So you're back to full strength. The one thing to point out would be that, like on DraftKings, the pricing actually has come down on Toronto. Lowry's down to 7,800. Siakam's sitting at 8K. So it's not really bad pricing, but Van Vliet coming back does take production away from Lowry. It'll take a little bit away from Siakam as well. The minutes for Siakam are still concerning. You saw around 30 minutes 2 games ago. You saw he played 24 yesterday in the blowout. He would have played around 30 if he got his final stint. So it's just really tough for me to prioritize anything from Toronto, with the exception of $5,100 Marc Gasol if he is in fact playing.
All right, let's continue on. We still got 4 games to go. You've got the Lakers at Houston. Marquee game here. This should be a fun one. I'm guessing Anthony Davis probably going to be out on this one, still dealing with his gluteus maximus injury there. You've got Rajon Rondo dealing with the finger issue. He is still listed as questionable. I'm kind of guessing he may not play this one, but I don't know, Adam. It's national TV Rondo. We like to make fun with that one, but if he's in, doesn't really get me overly excited for KCP. Really doesn't interest me in Alex Caruso, who missed the last game for a concussion. He has cleared the protocol. But if Rondo is out, I think those guys become somewhat interesting here. Perhaps an Avery Bradley. We need more minutes for those guys to be viable down there in Scrub-a-Dub land. How are you feeling about the prospects for Davis and Rondo?
So, I mean, my best guess right now, and it's purely a guess, is that Davis is out and Rondo is in. And that's simply based on Davis missing practice yesterday and Rondo going through practice. It sounds like for Rondo, it's a pain tolerance thing. Seems like the kind of guy that would like to be on the floor. So, just him going through practice and Davis not going through practice, my early projections and my best guess is going to be that Rondo's in and Davis is out.
All right, so Rondo being in kind of knocks out the rest of those guys. Maybe you think of a Danny Green there, plenty of people for him to guard, etc., but not as exciting. Rondo intriguing, 4,000 on DK if he's in. That is a tasty price point. You've got LeBron, who has sort of cornered the market there on assists, but he's going to have to really pick up the scoring load in this game today. His rebounds have been somewhat disappointing for his last few games, so that is a bit of a concern here. Let's start with those guys, and then we'll set Kuzma aside for his own discussion there. But what do you like amongst a very discounted Rondo, an elevated but King James, who has 5 total rebounds over his last 2 games? Hat tip that he has 27 assists in those games, but the 5 rebounds is a little concerning.
Yeah, the rebounds are a little concerning, and if you take Davis off the floor, the biggest impact it has on LeBron is the increased usage. The assist percentage actually comes down, and his rebounding percentage stays pretty much the same, which I think makes sense because when Davis doesn't play, you're getting more minutes from JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, who are obviously grabbing a lot of rebounds, and you don't have Davis offensively to convert assists for LeBron. So I think it all makes sense across the board. The net effect is that he does end up being more productive because of the increased usage, but it's not the kind of bump that you get for like James Harden when Westbrook is out. It's a much smaller bump than that. LeBron's salary has finally come up after being egregiously underpriced on DraftKings for a couple of days. He's still a reasonable option here, but I think that where he's basically the same price as James Harden, it's tough for me to put LeBron ahead of Harden, even if Davis does sit. So I like LeBron, but probably will have less of him than I will of Harden.
All right. So Dwight Howard, 55, DK 56, FanDuel 19 on Yahoo. Do you like the matchup better for him or let me rephrase that? Do you think he will get more minutes going against Capella or JaVale McGee, or are they going to continue to sort of split those center minute duties?
I expect it to continue to be like 22, 23 minutes for McGee and 25, 26 for Howard.
Okay, so would you lean toward, let's see, it looks like pricing more or less is taking that into account. You're getting about a 20 to 30% discount on McGee across the board. Does that drive your behavior at all or your decision making at all?
I'd give the slight edge to Howard just because the minutes have been there. Without Davis on the floor, Howard's averaged 1.11 DraftKings points per minute this year. McGee's averaged 1.26. If you put LeBron on the floor, which would be the case for basically all of McGee's minutes, his per minute production drops to or stays about the same at 1.27. So it's very, very comparable. You have a little bit of a discount on McGee. He's a little bit higher per minute producer, but he probably plays a couple minutes less than Howard. So one way to handle that if you were playing like one lineup would be assuming you can fit both without sacrificing something you really want, or fit either one without sacrificing something you really want. It's just the perfect spot to just kind of look at ownership.
All right. Kyle Kuzma gets his own little conversation here. Main point being is because his pricing is all over the place. He's 6,200 on DraftKings, 4,700 on FanDuel. It kind of splits the difference there. 21 on Yahoo. If we look at his last 4 games in which he has started all of them, 2 of them outstanding. This is what we wanted to see. These were games 3 and 4 ago against OKC and Dallas. He shot 24 and 22 field goals in those games, scored 36 NBA points, 26 NBA points for 46 and 37 fantasy points. His last 2 games still starts. His minutes have come down about 10 per. One was a blowout against Cleveland. All right, we can see that. But his minutes came down. I don't see it, but he only had 1 foul against Orlando there. So that is a little bit disappointing. But he shot 23 times total in those 2 games compared to averaging 23 field goals in the 2 games prior to that. What the hell are we going to get tonight from Kuzma? Let's assume Davis is out. FanDuel, very forgiving at that price point. Yahoo, it's neither really here nor there, but you do have late swaps, so you can get him in or out if you need to. But DraftKings seems like a stay away at 6,200.
It's really tough to be confident in because, even the game against Cleveland, you mentioned he played 26 minutes, but it was a blowout. He still played in the fourth quarter. He subbed in with 5.5 minutes to go, played down to the 2 minute mark. So he lost like those 2 minutes to the blowout, but that still only puts him at like 28 minutes, which is in the same ballpark he played against Orlando. I think to some extent it depends how he's playing, which obviously is not the worst thing in the world because if he's playing poorly, you're not winning a tournament anyway, and if he's playing well, he can easily get more minutes. The concern though is just how do you project those minutes? And like you said on FanDuel, he's very much priced. Like if you project 28 minutes for Kyle Kuzma, you're still going to get to him on FanDuel, and he does have the ability to play 34 plus. On DraftKings, you really need those 32 to 34 minutes. One thing that I think could help him is that you don't really have wings on the Rockets that he needs to defend. Like it doesn't matter that he's a liability when you're talking about PJ Tucker or Ben McLemore. Like these guys are just standing in the corner and shooting threes. So defensively, it might be a little bit easier for him to stay on the floor. But at the same time, I don't know if that was the driving factor or not and why he only played 26 minutes in those other games. So I think it's risky as he gets more expensive, but I also think his ownership probably comes down as he gets more expensive. So just a really volatile spot. And the best way to approach those is normally to just do the opposite of what the field is doing.
All right. Heading over here to the Rockets, kind of their big 3 are going to be the ones that we want to look at here. Let's see. So let me flip the script here on my pricing because I do want to call it out because it is going to drive some of our decision making. So Harden on the 3 main sites is 11-2, 11-5, 57. So he's kind of one of the most expensive guys. Russell's where it gets a little more interesting. He's 93, 94, and 46. So his price has come up a little bit here. And then you've got Capella sort of nesting in the middle there, 79, 79, and 36. For me, it's going to be Harden as the premier choice. Yeah, he may get some LeBron and or Danny Green defense. Those guys are no longer the elite defenders or on-ball defenders that they once were. And let's just throw it out there. Harden, it's really not defendable at this point, especially with his step back 3. Is Harden the number 1 play on the board for you tonight, or does the tough overall team defense dissuade you at all from giving him that honor?
Yeah, I think he's the number 1 guy for me. The only real concern you run into with Harden is that sometimes teams will kind of scheme to take shots away from him. You saw it against Portland. He only shot 12 times. And, Westbrook went nuts. We saw it against Toronto earlier this year, for example. They were just doubling him at half court and making him give the ball up. And so you got a big game from, I think it was like McLemore and Tucker or something like that. So that's kind of the risk you run. Like his average usage is going to be really high, even with Westbrook playing. But there's going to just be some weird games where teams are just like, we're not losing because of James Harden. So that's always a risk that you run. But I think that the salary at this point is really affordable for him. He had been up at 12-4. I think he was 12-4 on DraftKings last game with Westbrook in. Now you have him down at 11-2. You should get, 36, 37 minutes from him. So I think that it's a really good price point. He is a better per minute producer overall than James is, even without Davis on the floor. So at the same price tag and in comparable minutes, I give the edge to Harden.
All right. Let's, Capella or anybody else, any of the understudies stand out for you for Houston before we move on to the last 3 games?
McLemore's been starting. I'm trying to find the last Houston game so I can get that rotation. So against Portland, you got 30 minutes from PJ Tucker, which is less than you normally get. Normally, you're going to get 34, 35 minutes from him. But Ben McLemore played 24, House played 22. It's really tough to trust those guys. The one guy I would point out is Clint Capella, who played 36 minutes there, and you're pretty regularly in competitive games seeing around 36 minutes from him. He's pretty much always affordable, and he's a good. He's around a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy. He's only 7,900 on DraftKings. I think that Capella looks like a really really good option.
All right, moving along here. Orlando at Golden State, 212 over under here. Let's see, this one has been ticking up just a little bit. It opened at 210. You've got, let's see, D'Angelo Russell seeing some more minutes here as they potentially showcase him for a trade. Apparently, Minnesota is intrigued by getting him over to their squad. We have, let's see, Damian Lee is now on, he signed a 3-year contract, so he's no longer on his 2-way deal. So he's back with the team. He had run out of days. With those 2-way contracts, you can only be with the big club for 45 days before they have to convert or release you. And if they release you, then any team can sign you. That's why we see Kai Bowman back down there with the G League. Marquise Chris is back. He ended up getting put onto a 2-way contract because he more or less, for lack of a better term, cleared waivers. So he's kind of in the mix there. The injuries, though, Glenn Robinson, a little dinged up, sore right ankle. Golden State, they played last.
They
No, I
played
guess
two.
it was 2 days ago. So we'll have to see what happens with him. If Glenn Robinson is out, that does open up a bunch of minutes there. Let's start off here with Golden State since they seem to have more moving parts. We know Draymond Green is going to be out. He hurt his finger. He's probably going to be out until Monday or early next week. So there's extra minutes there. You've got Jacob Evans out. I think he's still in the concussion protocol there. What do you like or not like here from Golden State? Because they're going against a Magic team that's on their West Coast road swing and are not the same defensive stalwarts without Jonathan Isaac. They've got a banged up Fournier and Aaron Gordon, who both played last night but have been dealing with a variety of maladies. What do you want to do here with the Warriors? Because this could be some interesting value here with these extra minutes opening up again.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of still going to be a mess because they have a lot of bodies. But there are some interesting takeaways from the Denver game. For one, Willie Cauley-Stein got back in the starting lineup over Spellman, and I thought there was a decent chance that was kind of just like a nominal start and his minutes weren't going to change. But he played 30 minutes in regulation. Now you have him against a traditional center in or relatively traditional center in Vooch. So I think that you could get similar minutes there, especially with Green out. Maybe you get more Spellman at the 4. Against Denver, you had Chris play about 11 and a half minutes off the bench, mostly backing up Cauley-Stein. So I think Cauley-Stein potentially, could be in line for another 28, 30 minutes here, which is pretty appealing. For Green, not sure who will draw the start there. Could be Pascal, could be Spellman. We'll have to wait and see on that. Could be Burks with everyone sliding down. So a lot of different ways they could go there. If Robinson's out along with Green, then there's a lot of minutes available for guys like Burks, Poole, Damian Lee. So a lot of moving parts here. A really difficult matchup for Golden State against a good Orlando defense that also plays really slow. Even without Isaac, they've been good defensively. Aaron Gordon's a very good defender. And overall, they're just a good defensive team. But a lot of moving pieces. Like if Robinson's in, it's really tough to trust much outside of maybe taking some shots at Cauley-Stein in the front court. But if he's out, then you start to really get more solidified minutes for the guys like Green or like Lee and Burks, and a bump for Poole.
All right. Jumping over to the other side there, you've got Evan Fournier. Public service announcement. Don't ever Google Evan Fournier. I dare you to Google Evan Fournier. I did once. It was not pleasant. I'll just leave it at that. What do you want to do here with Orlando? I know they've. Let me get back to the injuries. So Michael Carter Williams is still questionable, dealing with a sore injury. They've DJ Augustine's out, right?
Yeah.
So Is it Markel Fultz season, as the kids like to say?
For me, I'm not really on Fultz except for games where Fournier is out. That's the big difference for me. Fultz's minutes without Augustine, you're looking at 32, 33 minutes normally, but the usage, he's still not like a primary option offensively if Fournier is in, because you still have Vooch, you still have Fournier. Gordon's a similar guy in terms of usage, and then the closing lineup most likely has Terrence Ross in it as well, who is a higher usage guy or a similar usage guy to Fultz. So when Fournier's in, it's just still not really that appealing, especially with the price tag coming up. Games Fournier sits is where I think you want to be looking to target Fultz. Where Fournier's in and even a little bit cheaper than Fultz, I'd rather take a shot on Fournier if I'm going to one of them.
All right. 4,404. That number is a little significant because if we get that number to 5,000 on the Osmo NFL Twitter channel, we will be giving a nice giveaway there. We need to get that up to 5,000 by the Super Bowl. Super Bowl is 2 weeks from tomorrow. So I'm dropping that link into chat. You're going to want to follow along with that. We have given away a variety of amazing things on the various Osmo accounts. You should follow all of them because they are all doing promotions at various points in time. But we have given away full years of access. That was our New Year's celebration. We've done a variety of other ones, but definitely get in there on the NFL account because one, even if NFL's over, I have a feeling that account's still going to be active doing giveaways, talking about the draft, etc., etc. So jump on in there and have some fun with that one. Anything else from this game, Adam, or we hit our final two here?
Um, yeah, I think that's about it. Aaron Gordon and Vooch both look like reasonable options, but like wouldn't say either one's a priority.
All right, Sir Dave winning chat. He said that Emac probably Googled Pornier instead of Fournier. There you go. That was very good. Very good. I may have to steal that one. I won't, but I may have to. All right, next game. We've got Portland and OKC. Injuries here, of course. We don't know what's going on with Steven Adams. He was out of the last one with the sore knee. You've got Gary Trent, who is dealing with a sickness. And then, oh yeah, you've got CJ McCollum. Have they ruled him out yet? He's listed as doubtful. He only played 12 minutes last night. Had a pretty significant ankle sprain there. I'm guessing he's probably not going to play. And then you had not a flu game, but an upper respiratory game from Damian Lillard. Sort of put the cap on my night. 8,200 for Lillard on DK. Feels like he's going to be one of the best options out there today. Talk to me about Portland, Adam.
Yeah, no real question about Lillard. That would be a cheap price point even if McCollum were in. But assuming McCollum sits, you're going to get increased production from Dame, who's averaged 1.29 DraftKings points per minute with a 33.3% usage rate without McCollum on the floor. The rotation we've been seeing from Portland was that McCollum and Melo were playing with the second unit and having their minutes staggered with Dame. Looking at last night's second half where McCollum wasn't in, you had Anthony play when Lillard wasn't out there. So I expect still that you'll have Melo and Lillard having their minutes staggered, which means you're going to have some minutes where Lillard is out there with no other high usage guys. And really just, getting even more of a bump, which is good for him. And then obviously when he's playing with Melo, he's still the leading usage guy. So Lillard looks like one of the best plays on the slate with assuming McCollum sits.
All right. I see. We'll get to the other guys here in just a sec, but I see in chat they're talking about Cowboys. You've got what's his name, Conor McGregor. So this is MMA talk. So you've got Conor McGregor going against the Cowboy Donald Cerrone tonight. So we have Osmo content here for MMA, and today you can get into it for just $1. Then I'll get you through the next week. So if you use the promo code, let me find that, UFC246. Hey, probably an easy one to remember there because that's the name of tonight's contest. But that will get you in for the premium video, the ownership projections, and player projections, or fighter projections, I guess, in this case. I will say I will be doing a little dabbling in the old MMA tonight. I have had fun with this. I don't like to watch MMA; it just doesn't interest me at all. But I do like the puzzle of putting these players together because there are generally 6 fights that are 6 players that we pick on the card. There's a lot of game theory and strategy going in here. Uh, DK pricing for the longest time has been built off of Vegas, but sometimes things are missed, and that helps us out with the pricing as well as with the player projections. This is a setup where the leverage, it's all about the leverage and it's all about the math. For those of you that are really into seeing who's stepping into the octagon, it is going to be enjoyable being able to root for one or the other based upon your picks. I do like that aspect, and I do follow along with the results. I just don't like I don't like the blood. Apparently, Adam, I'm fine with the. It didn't seem to bother me until I watched 2, and for whatever reason, it was 2 women, and just seeing those guys all bloody was not cool. So I'm not really a fan of it. If people want to fight, go for it. Literally, knock yourself out. I'm not saying it's bad. It's about as pure of a sport as you get. Mono e mono, or person to person, fisticuffs, as they say. Go for it. But just not for me. But it doesn't mean the DFS part of it isn't kind of fun from that standpoint.
I've never really gotten into it, but DraftKings got me tickets to one of the fight nights in DC recently, and it was really fun being there and experiencing it. So I definitely am more interested now than I was.
Yeah, and again, mine is more. You don't like violence. Hey, if you want to be violent, go be violent. That's up to you. It's a free country. I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that. It just it kind of bothers me just a little bit. And football's kind of turned into that way too. Like when we go from baseball, nice, nobody's getting snot knocked out of them, etc. And then all of a sudden, those first 2 weeks of football, it takes me a moment to recalibrate what I'm doing here. Just because now that we know more about concussions, and especially with the fighters, you're seeing them die after events, and just bad things happen, etc. That part just makes me.
I think for me, it's mostly just like not being familiar with scoring and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
that's generally what makes or breaks like a sport for me. Is like if like at the UFC event, I'm sitting there with my friends, being like, "Hey, so
So was that a
other
hard hit or a not? It was a hit, but what
yeah,
does
like
it count for?
other than obviously they're fighting, and if one of them gets knocked out, they lose. Like, what the hell am I watching?"
Yeah, definitely on that. But go for it. We do have some nice content here. But you can get in there for just $1. Again, that is promo code UFC246, all together, just like the contest for tonight. All right, wrapping up the old NBA here. We went a little longer, but at least we got our tech stuff sorted out. So Lillard, awesome. Whiteside, which way are the scales going to fall for you? If Adams is in, does that make you a little less interested in Whiteside, or does it matter at this point with the extra shots that should be available without CJ McCollum?
At 7,900 on DraftKings, I really wouldn't care if it was Ben Wallace starting for Oklahoma City.
Now that's not entirely true.
It is.
Oh boy, Ben Wallace. Like today's Ben Wallace or last year of playing Ben Wallace?
I 2003 Ben Wallace. Like, I would still roster Hassan Whiteside at 7,900. The guy's playing 34 plus minutes in competitive games. He's averaging 1.4 points per minute, and he's priced like a mediocre center.
Right. That's a good one. Carmelo Anthony, another guy with available shots here. He's familiar with the shooting background there in Oklahoma City. Any interest in Melo after last night's somewhat disappointing performance?
Yeah, he should get a bump without McCollum as well. You're gonna get it's not as big a bump as for Lillard, but you are gonna get around 10 to 12 minutes of Anthony playing without either of McCollum or Lillard on the floor. So far this season, he has played a total of only 19 minutes without either of them. So not really much you can take from that, but I would expect over those minutes, the usage rate to get up north of 30%. So that gives him a little bit of a bump. And then you also get a good value option in Anfernee Simons, who is only $3,100, should play mid 20s in minutes at least, and is just obviously really cheap.
Right. Yeah. Simon. Damn it. Simon says. Got to remember that. Simon says. Simons would be the guy that pops a little bit there. Basemore been, I don't know, his shots have been going in, makes him a little bit better from a fantasy perspective. Perhaps he won't stand in the corner shooting threes as much and be a little more active there without CJ McCollum. Flipping the script over here to the other side, one Nerlens Noel coming back from injury, ended up with 21.2 minutes last night in the loss to Miami. 10 points, 6 boards, 3 blocks, ended up with 26 fantasy points. Is he the guy? So if Adams is in, are you interested at all in Noel?
No, if Adams is in, I'm assuming you're getting around 30 minutes from Adams and like 18 for Noel. If Adams is out, I have interest in Noel. The problem is just obviously you don't know how many minutes he's going to play. Only played 21 last night. Burned me pretty badly. I tried to use him as a pivot to the more popular Marcus Gasol and lost out on that one pretty big. So I'd be wary of his minutes. Probably go like 24 for him and 24 for Muscala or something like that.
All right, and then for the backcourt there, oh, well, I guess we got Danilo Gallinari as well. Actually, this isn't too bad of a matchup for Danilo Gallinari. Assuming they will maybe put Carmelo on him theoretically.
I would think so.
I
Yeah.
say that hesitantly because it's not like Carmelo's actually going to guard anybody, but that does give you a nice little uh, bonus there for Gallo. You've got Chris Paul at 7K on DK, Shea Gilgis Alexander at 72, Dennis Schroeder coming up to 64. How you feel about that quartet?
It's a good matchup. Portland has been one of the least efficient defenses over the last month. They are playing at a middle of the pack pace. I think that Paul's price tag looks pretty good for the season. He's averaged about 1.07 DraftKings points per minute. You should get around 32, 33 minutes from him. I like Gallo quite a bit at 6,600. Coming off of a big game last night where he played 33 minutes. I think that, again, you get around 32, 33 minutes here in a favorable matchup. And then Gilgis Alexander and Schroeder, I would rank a little bit behind Paul, but I do think Schroeder is worth mentioning because we had seen some games where he was getting really big minutes recently. He played 30. Did he start? He started the second half over Ferguson last night, according to Popcorn Machine, um, and played 37 and a half minutes. But this is also against Portland, who runs a lot of smaller lineups. So it'll be really easy for OKC to go with 3 guard lineups here. I think that you could get mid 30s from Schroeder again.
All right, let's hit up our last game. We'll get on out. If a reminder, you do get fasted. If you're tonight, live before lock, 6 o'clock for our 10-game slate. We've got Sacramento at Utah. We should be seeing the return of Bogdan Bogdanovic. He has missed the last 6 games with a sore ankle or a sprained ankle, so he should be coming back. No word on if he's going to start or not, but this should give everybody, with the exception of Rashawn Holmes, back to the Kings, who are not quite at full. They've been full strength for what, 5 games this year, but you've got you've had an interesting conversation here on Marvin Bagley. So I want to start out with him. That one was lost to the interwebs last night. So you and I are kind of on different sides here of Bagley's minutes. I am feeling more conservative and thinking he's in that 25-minute range. You were being a little bit more generous, getting him up to 30. The fair point being that Rashawn Holmes is going to be out. How are you feeling about that now that we've gone through each game individually here and are wrapping this one up? You still feeling good about a very fair price point for Marvin Bagley?
Yeah, he played 30 minutes against Dallas. I don't know why he would play less minutes here, like barring foul trouble or something. Like he's clearly not on like a 24, 25-minute restriction. So he got the start against Dallas. He played 30 minutes. I'm fine going right back to 30 minutes here. He's played 123 minutes this year with Fox on the floor. He's averaged about a fantasy point per minute, 22.9% usage. So the production comes down a little bit because he's starting, but the minutes are more solidified in my opinion, and it's obviously not a good matchup, but the salary is just really really cheap. So I think Bagley looks like a really good option.
All right. Branching out, I can't go to Bogdan Bogdanovic, but I am looking at the other guys here. I think De'Aaron Fox is intriguing. He is clearly fully healthy and just been having some amazing games. Not the easiest matchup here against Utah, but they are playing at a faster pace than they have in the past. Proportionally, they're still one of the better defensive teams. This game, of course, is in Utah. That is at altitude. But I think De'Aaron Fox is quite intriguing. And then Buddy Hield at 6,400. I really, really like that. He's taking, I think, the third most um, 3-point shots today. So, what do you think we've got here for this game as we wrap it up? We've got an NFL game that's going to be on here in just a second, or probably an NFL show that's coming up here in just a moment.
Yeah, so Fox's salary isn't the most appealing at 8,100 on DraftKings, especially when you consider it's only $100 less than Lillard. But he is playing huge minutes. He played 37 and a half last game. You're pretty routinely seeing 35, 36 plus in competitive games. Utah, is a slower team. They are a good defensive team. It is worth noting that they've allowed the second most points to pick and roll ball handlers this year. They've allowed the most possessions per game. So they rank in the middle of the pack in efficiency, but they are giving up points there, and that could benefit Fox. So I think I'm happy if I get to him. I wouldn't say he's a priority at that salary, but I do think he has a high ceiling. Hield's salary is affordable, like $1,600, $1,700 less than Fox's. You're getting the same 35, 36 minutes normally from Hield. So both of those guys look like pretty good options as well.
All right, wrapping it up here because we do have an NFL show on deck. You've got Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Joe Ingles. I think they are all excellently priced on DraftKings. I like this matchup for them. We have seen Sacramento is picking up about 3.5 possessions per game over their last 6 or 7, with most everybody healthy compared to their season-long average here. So we see the pace picking up somewhat here. I like that as a little tidbit that these guys can get to. Do you like that quartet? Any red flags other than potentially Mike Conley coming back from his hamstring injury tonight?
Yeah, Mike Conley's probable. So that kind of throws a wrench into stuff. It'll be interesting to see how the rotation works out. Mitchell should still get his minutes, and he hasn't been super productive even without Conley. So I still think he's reasonable. Gobert is at a nice price point. His salary dropped quite a bit. But I do think that maybe you see usage go down for someone like Bogdanovic. You potentially see Ingles lose some minutes. We don't know exactly how Jordan Clarkson will fit in with Conley back. So outside of Mitchell and Gobert, it's tough for me to trust much on Utah.
All right, we are going to get on out of here. Reminder, get that NFL show up next. It will be starting in 3 minutes or less. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this fun Saturday. We'll get this turned into a podcast. Shout out to Yahoo for being the presenting sponsor for the show. You know the drill. Go to the bottom of the Yahoo Baller article for the NFL or the Cash Game Building Blocks article. Bottom paragraph will give you the link, instructions, and promo code of how you can claim $30 with your initial DFS deposit. With that, gamers,